part two of March 16th here, right, 2025. So a couple ways to look at Psalm 119. You can just read the verses. They are at face value, whatever they say. Okay, but the fact that they're broken into 22 subtitles, we could say, well, there's something about the 8 verses that are in Aleph, which specifically fit in Aleph, which wouldn't fit in any other letter category. The problem with that, and the same thing we could say is bet, you know, those 8 sentences fit with bet that wouldn't fit anywhere else. That I didn't find that to be the case. I personally, looking at the subject matters of the Aleph, almost looked like they could fit anywhere. And same too with any of the verses. Not 100%. I mean, you could sit there and read a verse and try to figure out, well, for example, I could just to show you what I mean here. I could open up Psalms 119. I'm going to pick a random verse here. Before I was afflicted, I erred, but now I keep your word. Which letter do you think that would fit in? It's like, oh, it could be almost any one. I mean, here's another. Gosh, hang on. Your word is a lamp for my feet and a light for my path. Oh, how I love your Torah. All day long, it is my conversation. That could be almost any letter. So what I'm saying is that if I can't assign a particular statement to a particular section by the nature of what it's saying, because they're all kind of saying the same thing, there must be a different reason for what verses are in what section. And that's where I found that, well, what's happening, what David did when he wrote this, he was obviously contemplating the language, because he has the first letter of the first word of each verse tied to that section. So that's where the study of saying, well, read the first word as if it was a sentence. Ashri, Ashri, Af, Ata, Akli, Az, Odeka. Then ALEF-TAV hyphenated with Chokika. So it would be Et Chokika, just because there's that hyphen. I was combining the letters. And that's what I was reading last week. But so as this other type of consideration, as an exercise, what I thought I would do here, and that is if you guys, whoever wants to participate in this, is I'll go through every verse, every single verse, 176 verses, but that's going to take some time. So if I just took 2 hours to go through the 8 verses of section Aleph, 8 verses, if I took this 2 hours, it's going to take 22 weeks. That's 6 months. That's half the year. Okay, so we'll take half the year and go through Psalms 119, if that's what you want to do. And what I'm trying to say is, I would strongly suggest you do for yourself. You write down the words in Paleo. So remember when you were a kid in school, kindergarten or first grade. I remember sitting there and having lined paper and writing the letter A 100 times, then the letter B 100 times. Well, that was yesterday. Do it again today. 100 times the letter A, 100 times the letter B. And then do it again tomorrow. You just have to do that. Your pen in your hand on your piece of paper. And I would suggest you do it like this. Written right to left in Hebrew. Paleo, I write in red, but whatever color you want. Paleo in one color, and right underneath it, the modern Hebrew. I don't like the modern Hebrew. Well, do it anyway, because when you read, it's in modern Hebrew. And if you wanted to really get your head going, put another color underneath it, which would be the modern cursive. I don't even know the modern cursive real well. Now on the deck of cards, there's the modern cursive on there, because if you go over to Israel these days, they write in modern cursive. Not 100%, but most of the time. And you might as well learn the modern cursive while you're at it. So I would take maybe the color green, so there's a big difference, and it's not scripture. Scripture's written in the, like I said, the blue here. That's just my own color scheme, but whatever. Write the paleo, write the modern cursive, and write the English letters. But when you write with English letters, I had to think of a call it a syntax, a formula for standardized reference. And so what I've done is that when I see English letters, I automatically, that's read right to left. It's English letters. So YHUH, Yahuwah, Yod-He-Vav-He. But see, if I have these arrows written here, that's English. It's because I'm reading from right to left. If I wrote the word Ashri way over here, somebody might look up, is that Ashri's over here? So I wrote these individual arrows just as a little reminder that says, okay, the English letters are read left to right, but the Hebrew letters are read right to left. And so you got to let yourself know that that's what you're doing. And I've seen more than once or twice where teachers or things that are written at a church, they'll write the English or they'll write the Hebrew words backwards because they're saying, well, we're English readers, so we're gonna spell the Hebrew word from left to right. And it's like, you cannot do that. It doesn't work that way. The only way it'll work that way is if you don't care how to spell, you don't care if you're literate, you're going to just write stuff however you're going to write. And I say that because if you look at a coin that was stamped, that was made numismatics, I believe is what the word is when you stamp a coin. And they will, in the past, write letters all over the place. And it's almost like it didn't matter. And you'll find some archaeological pieces, that a shard of pottery or a rock that had some letters written on it. And it seems like at some point in time, whoever the author of that thing was, didn't have it in their mind that, hey, we should write in straight lines, in one direction from right to left or left to right or top to bottom. So they just threw letters all over the page. And it makes me think, was this an artifact that was found that Moshe would have written, or one of his students would have written it? If Moshe wrote all the words of Yahuwah on this scroll, and then he gave it to or told the heads of each tribe that they should have their own Torah. Now, I heard somebody once say Moshe sat there and he wrote it for himself, and he gave it to the head of Judah, the head of Reuben, the head of Gideon, Gad, or Simeon. Or did he tell those guys, you write it for yourself? Now, remember, there was a stipulation that when a king, a melech, goes to sit on his throne, he should write, first order of business, he should write for himself the words of the Torah. And it's like, that's going to take some time. I've only gotten through 10 chapters because I never find the time to sit and do it when I have a clear way of thinking. Though I want to do it, it's like everything in my life is too scrambled to allow me to even sit and write for a few minutes. So how is a king supposed to run the country or run the city and have all these people that he's talking to and try to conduct business and, stop and write the Torah? But you're supposed to. That was the command. And then the question is, well, is it a king or is it one who wants to do what Yahweh said? A melech, mem lamed kaf. Lamed kaf. Lamed is a teaching, an authority. Kaf, you. Leka is the word that means you go, or go, get out. Leka, translated go, get out. Abraham was told, get out from where your father's family culture is and go to a place I'll show you. So Abraham being the one who got up and he was Melech. Mem is the one who, Lamed Kafs. But was he a king? I mean, he was a big guy, wealthy and powerful. He ended up being in that capacity, but that doesn't mean he was per se a king. What I'm saying is that every word you have to sit there and figure out, what is this? And where's the value? And if you look at Psalm 119, every single verse only has 5 or 6 words in it. That's all. They're short sentences. Some of these verses that we've looked at over the years in this study from Isaiah or Zechariah, it's like some of these words might have 20 words in them. But these are 5 or 6 words. They're kind of short and sweet. It's kind of like, look, see Dick and Jane, see Dick run. Look, Dick and Jane were these things I remember having in kindergarten, first grade. I don't even know how many people had those, at least in America. That was I think it was called the Look and See books or something. Very simple. These words are very simple. You can use these words of Psalm 119 as your Dick and Jane look and see elementary reader. But you ought to have the pen in your hand and write the Paleo letters, the modern Hebrew letters, the English letters. By writing the English letters, your brain has to go, oops, I got to flip it backwards. That's right. It's a little bit of gymnastics. And then write down the translation of each word. Look in the dictionary, Strong's Concordance, or online, or wherever you get it from. And then what I would call synthesizing or pull it together. I will sing my fire song without blemish, perfect integrity, complete, finished, summed up, fulfilled. Your generation walking is educated, frame of mind traveling the way that flows in the light of Torah, which Yahweh instructed he would sustain to exist as so. The other way to read that is Yahweh saying, you want to be RESH Man? I will provide the circumstances by which you can fulfill your potential. Why does this universe exist? Why does the world exist? Why is there an Adam, a man, you? Why do you exist as a consciousness on this planet? You can choose to become RESH Man. That's why everybody can choose to fulfill that capacity, RESH. That's why you're here. And if you don't want to be RESH, you might end up being pushed into the lake of fire and turned to ash for the rest of eternity. But if you want to be RESH, everything that happens, everything you bump into in this life is an opportunity, a circumstance that Elohim provides, that if you walk according to as how the Torah instructed, to lead you, to guide you, to walk this way in his flowing course, you'll end up in the RESH capacity after the resurrection. That's what it's saying. That's the secret qualification, is that those who succeed, those who become RESH Men, will have walked in the Torah of Yahuwah. Now, if that's the case, if that's the truth, if that's the fundamental reality on this planet, for Adam to exist, for the universe to be made to accommodate that, then what that means is this is just a proving ground. This is just a garden plot. And that those who are reaped, harvested as RESH Men, as you might say, as the barley grain, are for another functional purpose in the by and by, in the heavenlies, after this, because kuf means after this. Kuf is our letter Q, but it's almost shaped like this sickle of harvesting Zadi is a shape. Tzitzi, Zadi means to blossom and flourish. So there's the grain head coming out of the time on earth, Mishkan pattern, harvested, the Kuf harvesting the Zadi unto Resh status. Resh Shin Tav literally means net, trap, snare. It means betrothed, means authorized, licensed, permitted. It means to be Yahuwah's agent, deputy unto some other project that we don't even know about. But see, I can read that into these letters. It's another mechanism of translation. But if I start here and say, what does this mean? What am I supposed to do with this information? Well, this just says, if you have no intention of doing what Yahweh said, then don't waste your time. If you want to do what Yahweh said, there is an after this, because Resh follows Kuf. Where's Resh? It's in the word Ashri. Aleph Shin, Resh, Yod. But then I have to be able to break that down and know what each letter means. That's another part of the mechanism of translation. So me doing this is for my own sanity, whether anybody else likes it or anybody else agrees, or whether anybody else does it or anybody else even thinks there's something to do. And I say that because Michael Brown and Michael Heiser and Miles Jones apparently think this is all bogus. Well, they can think it's bogus. Isaac Moseson, talking to him, he doesn't want to hear about this kind of thing. Okay, then will not communicate. But I find this to be worth all my attention. And because this is worth all my attention, that means other stuff in my life don't get attended to. Imagine that. You know, you have a balloon and you squeeze it here and it poofs out there. So it's like, you know, every hour I spend looking at this stuff is going to cost me an hour of productivity somewhere else. So I want to apologize to people I haven't been able to respond to who are expecting a response. I will fail. I will fail to meet people's expectations. I just want to tell you that right out of the gate. So anybody who thinks that I should be doing something other than I am, I'm already going to tell you, I'm going to blow it. I'm not going to live up to other people's expectations because I'm already overwhelmed with a bunch of responsibilities and doing this. So forgive me, please. But if you can't forgive me, then that's on you. You know. Let me get to verse 2. Achli, Aleph Chet Lamed Yod. I wish. But Chet Lamed, like you get the word challah bread, and it can mean rusty and sick, but it could also mean sweet and pleasant. Achal, Aleph Chet Lamed, in the dictionary, it means to wish. Yod, Kaf, Nun, Vav. Well, Kaf, Nun is the word can, which is yes. Yod prefix, Vav suffix, yakan, yakano. So for me to write the English letters YKNU, well, the Vav, is that pronounced as an O or a U? Well, if I write the O as the placeholder for the ayin, I'm going to write the U as the placeholder for the Vav. But technically, the Vav can be pronounced as an O, a U, a V, or a W. All four letters are the pronunciation in English of the letter Vav. So is it Yakanawa, or is it Kanu or Ikno? Or is it Yakenu, Yakano, Yakanwa? Wrap your mind around however you want to articulate it, just start. If Kaf Nun means yes, then this word, he will yes it. He will yes Vav suffix it. Yes, certain, absolutely established. It's aimed. Look at Kaf Noon. Look at Kaf Noon Noon. Look at Kaf Noon Vav Noon. Look at Kaf Vav or Kaf Yod Noon. Kaf Vav Noon. You look at all those derivatives with the other letters. Looked at Hey Kaf, Yod Kaf, Tav Kaf, Nun Kaf, Mem Kaf. Look at all these things. That's one of the other mechanisms of the translation, looking at the dictionary, just to wrap your mind around what this is about. This is something to do with which is yesness, a basket of yes stuff. And then there's Dalet Resh Kaf Yod. Well, Derek, that's that. We talked about that in the previous verse, didn't we? Derek, way, method, educated, as instructed. And you look in the dictionary, you'll even find it has to do with being taught how to bend a bow. A bow is a stick with a string. You just pull it back and, yeah, but if you don't do it right, you'll either catch your ear and rip your ear off, or you'll hit your finger, or the arrow will hit the wrong target. Everything looks easy until you try it. Derek is the way to do it properly so that it works, so that your objective is the target is hit with the arrow. Your objective is accomplished. La Shemer, well, if Shemer means watch, keep, and guard, it also means to observe. And then Chokika, Chet Kuf Yod Kaf. Well, Et Chokika, that's the last word in the 8 verses. Et Chokika, this is Chokika. See, quite often you'll find that the same words in this little exercise is used again and again and again and again. So if you start writing, even though there's 176 verses, it's a pretty good vocabulary, but it's certainly not even close to the whole language, because there are just 5 or 6 words per verse, and a lot of the words are duplicated, and a lot of the words are just 2-letter, 3-letter word roots with prefixes and suffixes. I mean, this isn't that difficult. This is a good place to start. So the word shomer, watch, keep, guard, observe. Chok, chokika, kaf suffix means you, yours. Chok, chet kuf, well, that's the word that's law, that's constitution, custom. Chok also means to write with your finger, engraving, which are usually done on government buildings or the tables of stone, and it means to imitate. Choki would be my, so I could say, I'm supposed to be imitating you, your law, your custom, your constitution. That's my frame of mind about Yahuwah's authoritative governing stuff. My wish, I wish. It's all about the yes of my way guarding your law, guarding how do I imitate you. So if I'm going to guard the instructed way to bend the bow, to walk the derrick, by imitating your law, if I'm going to guard, keep, and observe that with yesness, yakano, and I want, how sweet and pleasant that I can guard that. Then as soon as somebody says, Jesus died on the cross, so you don't have to do that anymore. It's like, well, shut up. I'm not going to listen to that. That's sick and rusty. If achalo is that achli is that if I wish for the sweet, pleasant yesness, where I can form my way, my procedure, my method of conducting my walk, guarding his command, then as soon as I get these voices in my head, you don't have to. Jesus died on the cross. It's done away. You're profaning his grace. Then shut up. I'm not going to listen to that worship music anymore. And I'm not going to go to that church and listen to that pastor go, rah, 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 squawking that noise in my face. I can't do it. And then it looks like I'm the guy with the attitude. because those voices are profaning David's melodic voice. See, it really does stir up conflict, and that's just verse 2. Achli, oh, I wish. Oh, is that just poetry, or is that a cry of the heart? I wish that I could, yes, my way to observe your chok, your law. Pretty simple. Actually, I missed a page. That's verse 5. Verse 2 is Ashri Natsari Nun Zadi Resh Yod, then Ayin Dalet Tav Yod Vav. Remember, Ayin Dalet, Ed, that's the warning. Ayin Vav Dalet, again and again, repeatedly, forcefully. Mem Vav, Moed, appointed time. Edi, Ayin Dalet Yod is choice, best, treasure, adornment, ornamentation. Bakal Lav, with all heart. And then the last word of verse 2 is Yod Dalet Reshin. Well, Dalet Reshin, drosh, that's to seek and study and really analyze. Evidenced by with what arm. Yod Dalet is arm. Reshin is rosh, which is, could be head, could be foundation. It seeks, studies, searches, analyzes, demands, inquire, tread, trample, worship, expound. Look in the dictionary. That's all drosh. So here it says praiseworthy, ashri, natsar. Well, it says natsar is a sprout, a shoot, a blossom. Remember, Zadi is the picture of the blossom, and there's the resh. So I could take a look at Zadi resh is this blossoming resh. Well, that's like Yeshua coming out of the grave as this resh status, because the Pei Zadi is the grave opening, and coming out is this butterfly type. See, I'm appropriating the symbols of the orthography of the letters with the Mishkan pattern, with the pictographic chronological sequencing. It means to preserve, keep close, protect, keep secret, put the safety catch on a weapon. I mean, you have to pay attention towards, that's not Tsar. Ayin Dalet, Tav Yod Vav, Tav Yod Vav, those are all three suffix letters. Ayin Dalet is the witness testimony, adorned. It also means that which can be removed, but call love with all heart. But the word call, kaf lamed, is not just all, but it's each, every, any, anyone, everyone, all of them, with all heart. So how do I put that together in a sentence? I mean, I could speak that sentence, hear the English, Yadarshuhu, love bakal. No, I'm reading it backwards. See, it has to start over here. Ashri Natsri Adet you bakal love Yadarshuhu. But then to put it down here on the with the brown pen, I wrote Asharaya, Natsaraya, Gadatayawa, Bakala Lava, Yadarasha Wahawa. Well, you just got to look at it and mess around with it. Whoever wants to be blessed, accomplish life as praiseworthy, be my jewel. See, if the word for natsar is a blossoming of something that's protected, and then the next word has to do with adorned or removed, then I'm combining the two and saying that the prefix letter nun is to be natsari. Yod is the suffix meaning my, and tu. The vav suffix is he, the yod is my. So I'm joining these two together and be my jewel. Guard my testimony. Keep close what I have declared to be my designated appointed assemblies. That's the ayin dalet tav. Preserve it as if you would be held accountable for what you did with what was entrusted to you. That's pei kuf dalet. In other words, because I know the parable of the wealthy man who went on a journey and left his talents with, gave one guy 5, one guy 3, one guy 1. He left stuff. He says, I'm going to come back and hold you responsible. He gave them his valuable stuff and said, you tend it and I'll come back. I have to be able to plug that into the story also. With all heart, the condition of each heart. There's no my in the word bakal love. So bakal, bet is not just with or in, but it's also in the condition of. So the condition of each heart is what? As evidenced by with what arm it seeks, studies, searches, analyzes. So in other words, this is saying, now I have to go back and try to synthesize all this and say, whoever wants to be blessed, whoever wants to be the RESH Man, and when you get to your last day and you stand in front of the throne of Elohim, and he says, well done, good and faithful servant, what's he going to qualify your well-doneness by? Is he going to say, because you droshed with all heart my testimony, Natsri, you kept close and protected my bejewelment. The things that I said were dear to me, that I entrusted with you, you kept as dear to your heart. Good job. Thank you. That's what I asked you to do. That's what this verse is saying. But again, if somebody says, you don't have to do that stuff, well, then they're out of this league. I'm not going to say any person who says you don't have to do this stuff is going to burn in hell. I'm not saying those words. What I'm saying is this describes a league of the heart of Yahuwah's, let's say, droshers, those who want to drosh, those who want to seek, study, clarify, demand, inquire, tread, trample, like threshing grain, like stomping grapes to get the juice. What work do you have to go through to get the product? And the product you're trying to get is your own understanding. Your own fortitude is built and you become the resh of your own personal efforts of crushing down Yahuwah's words and assimilating them into your DNA by having his words written on your heart and on your mind, and somehow pulling his stuff into every cell of your being. But you got to do it for yourself. Verse 3, Af, lo, Aleph Pei, Lamed Aleph. Well, but why is Lamed Aleph low? The Lamed Vav should be Lamed, should be low, because the Aleph is silent. So it's le, la, ah. Well, if you give it the phonetics, it's la, e. Af, afa, la, e, pa, alawa. Afa, la, e, pa, galawa, gawalaha, Badarakala Yawa, Halakawa. You could read it that way, or you could just look at Af, Lo, Polu, Rula, Badarkaya, Halaku. You just got to get the words in your own mouth. My mother used to teach kindergarten phonics. And that's just the way you do it. You got to look at the word and force your own mouth to say the letters phonetically. And then write the translation. Also, knows, wrath, to characterize. No, not. Compelled to act, verb, put in motion, inspired, induced. Ayin Vav Lamed is iniquity. Derek eo, although that's the word Derek again. Way, Dereki, my way. Dereki ka, that's the you suffix. Bet means on is a prefix. You on my way, haleka, that means they will walk. So then how do you put it all together? Also, the primary characteristic is that they cannot be compelled, coerced, leveraged, or hired to do iniquity. No reward or enticement is enough for those who have received my instruction, for those who learn to walk as guided, those who have a palate for my luxury. You see, this is a statement, verse 3, that once you get it, once you taste Yahuwah, it says elsewhere that his words are as sweet as honey, sweeter than the honey flowing right out of the hive with all its goodness, the nutrients, all the stuff that the bees put in it that hasn't been tampered with, pasteurized, refined, supplemented with chemicals, right out of the hive. That's Yahweh's words, right out of the paleo. Once you've tasted that, you cannot be coerced, enticed, induced, or paid to do the iniquity because you get it. You understand why not. But you see, the words of the Nachash speaking to Eve tugged at the heart of her own ignorance. She didn't quite get it. And Adam, for whatever reason, people make up stories. Oh, Adam didn't want to leave her, and so he did what she did, and Adam was right there. People make up all kinds of stuff because that's what people do. They supplement what's said with imaginary stories, creating the scene of what was going on. You got to realize that every time you hear anybody tell you about the Bible stories. Verse 4, Atah, ALEF-TAV Hey, well, that's translated as the word you, but you could read it not just as Atah, but Etaha, Etaha. Then Zadivav Yod-TAV Hey. Well, Zadivav, that's the word for command, like the admiral giving an order, the captain of the ship telling you what to do, the boss telling you this is what's your job. Yod-TAV Hey, Yata is the suffix. So it's basically, I have commanded, I have expressed command. Then here's the word pei kuf dalet, yod kaf. Again, yod makes it possessed by self, and then kaf is the word you. So pei kuf dalet, that's the word PQD, YK, padayek, or it's PH, which is the F sound, fakadyaka. I will require of you. I gave you a precept. I will require of you. I'm going to come back and ask you what you did with what I told you. If you didn't have the truth, you can't be held accountable. But if you know the truth, if you were told the truth, I want to know what you did with it. According to your heart and your arm, according to who you choose to be in life, is going to determine what you do with this. Lashemer ma'od. Well, the word ma'od or ma'ad is where we get the word madly, M-A-D, madly. Like the Beatles song, I love her madly. That madly is your very extreme. So now if you could say to guard madly, then now I have to pull all these together and say, you were commanded. I myself gave the order. You are entrusted with my precepts. You will give account for what you have done with it. Very serious, dire warning, severe consequences at risk. Because the word shamar, well, Ayin Vav Dalet, remember we talked about that, that meant warning, beware. But shamar, watch, keep, guard, is also sometimes translated as beware. Beware for your souls, shamar nefshaka. Watch, beware of what's going on. Your soul is the prize that you have an adversary trying to grab, compromise, snatch, ruin, crush. You better guard your own mind, guard your own heart. How do you do that? Somehow you've got to shut out the other voices and focus on the target, bullseye, goal. How do you do that? And you got to do it for yourself. Very serious. Shamar madly. Well, see, that's an attitude that you got to do for yourself. I can tell you what I think it says. And if you read the English, it'll read differently. I already read verse 5. Akli yakano daraki la shamar chokika. Then verse 6. Az, Aleph Zion, or Eza, at that time. Lo abush. Well, bet vav shin, you look in the dictionary, it means to be embarrassed, or where we get the word bashful. I will not be ashamed. At that time, I will not be ashamed. Lo abush. Bet hey bet yod tet yod. Beha biti. Or baha bayataya. The word hey bet tet. To look, to gaze at, to stare at, to fix your attention on. Remember, Yeshua said, if I be lifted up, just like Moshe lifted up the serpent on the stake, the snake shape on the trellis apparatus in the wilderness, that whoever looked, they were bitten by the vipers, and whoever looked at that would be saved from the viper bite. They didn't just glance. This was the word they had to stare at, to look at. It also means aspect, and it also means utterance. So I can combine all those things together, and it's like stare at the writing of the words. The aspect is what you see. The utterance is what you hear. Just stare at. What did Moshe lift up? The nun shape on the samach. What's nun samach? Something you lift up. It's a miracle, wonder, a providential event. That's the same as paleo. What's Yeshua, the living one, lifted up on the crucifix, the cross, the apparatus, the trellis, hanging there for us to look at. That's why the eriktology symbol is the nun on the samach. And the word hay, samach nun, hay is the bush. So the two hays written as wings, aspect of what did he say? What did Moses hear the bush? What voice spoke to Moshe while he was looking at hay, samach nun, hay? You see, you just put all these things together, again, like sound and light on day one, oscillating the ruach. It's like the words written, the words spoken, you have to pull all these things together to synchronize your heart, your mind, your being as the waters below with the heart, the mind, the beings with the waters above, for that to be quantum entangled, echad, with Elohim. In Yeshua, to see his narrative story, it's like, hey, I'm just manifesting this stuff. I'm manifesting what I hear my Father saying, doing what I see him doing. Again, hearing and seeing is all about reflected light. The breathing, the word ruach, that's merahefeting. The voice, hearing the shofar, the voice of the shofar, the breathing, Mount Sinai, breathing into Adam, the breathing of the name, breathing in, the breathing out. There's something about the breath, the wind, the ruach, the sound, the light, the frequency, the vibration. It's all the same stuff. Then at that time, I will not be ashamed when I am looking at the utterance, Aleph Lamed is motion toward Kaf Lamed, all, each, every, any, Mem Zadi Vav, Tav Yod Kaf. Zadi Vav, again, is command, matzah, what you commanded. So the translation is, then at that time I will not be ashamed. I will not be, see the word bet, Vav Shin also means to be dried up. I will not be dried up. Why? Because there's this flowing course of the waters. And Yeshua even said that the words of Elohim are a fount of living waters. I will not be dried up. See, but I have to then know the other parables, the different things Yeshua said, which I can pull in and supplement these verses with. Which if you go take a Jewish class, they're not going to do that with Yeshua or anything in the New Testament. Too bad, they don't believe in that stuff. Toward everything you commanded for me. See, the word matzah also means find out how to do something. Mem Zadi Hey versus Mem Zadi Aleph. In this case, Mem Zadi Vav. Then at that time of what? He's pointing back to the previous sentence. How I wish the yesness of my way. Then at that time, for David to be saying here to retain this passionate desire of achli is also aleph bet betness, avivness. To have a passionate desire for or a resistance against. So again, pulling in the you might say what's going on in the environment of the calendar. Well, that's day 4. Sun, moon, and stars in the sky. But being impregnated by the seed put into earth to bring forth vegetation, that's day 3. The quantum entanglement where the two waters were separated, but such as one does, the other one will do if they're of the same frequency, the combining of the entanglement, that's basically like the pregnancy, the male and female forming the zygote. So there's these pictures, which is the picture of the plant seed in the womb, and then pulling you into the day 4. Then at that time is day 4. So what I'm saying is that you can just almost follow this progression if you correlate these things to the Mishkan pattern, the first chapter of Genesis. If you get to verse 7, then that's the word odeka, your voice, be yashar, yashar, like the book of Jasher, like the first 3 letters of Israel, yashar el, like the word ashar of the first 2 verses, ashri, who would be, because the word asher means who, it means that. Blessed, straight, worthy, right. So the word yashar, straight, right, honest, true, on the up and up. Lavav, that's the word for heart. So lamed bet is heart. Lavav is like your deep inner heart, to be tucked into your heart. Odeka be yashar lavav be lamedi. Well, lamedi, well, that's like the letter lamed. Lamed means teach and learn. Taught one, disciple. Talmud, put a T, tav in front of lamed, and you get Talmud. That's the Talmud, that's the teachings, the ones who were taught. Mishvat, mem, shin, pei, tet, yod, mishvati. Well, what's pei, tet is to be equal, balance. Shofet is the word for judge. Mishvat is the word for judgment. Mishvati is my judgment. Well, what's my judgment? How am I going to be judged? What is it that's going to be determining what happens to me? He told us a man's way will be returned on his own head. That's mishvat. That's judgment. That's justice. A man's way returned on his own head. No escaping that. The throne of Elohim is founded on that principle, that concept. And then the word zadikika, zadikka, zadi dalit kuf kaf. Kaf suffix means your righteousness, your righteous judgment. That's the way it's translated, but those words zadik, zadik, zadaka, ka, zadi dalit kuf means righteousness, but it's also victory, deliverance, and salvation and justice. Your justice, you, Yahweh, your exercise of justice is to give victory, deliverance, and salvation as a returning of a man's way on his own head. And the only way that a man can get victory, deliverance, and salvation coming back on his own head, which is also righteousness, because your Torah is righteousness, that if a man walks in the ways of Torah, he gets zadika, victory, deliverance, and salvation brought back on his own head. That's what your mishpat says. So the taught ones are the ones that will listen to what you said by doing the straightness of my heart as I am taught. But see, this says, I will praise you, Odeka, or I will give praise to you, or your voice in the condition of straightness. So that means David had to think, I can trust what I read. I can trust what I hear. As I ponder your words, O Yahweh, my Elohim, I choose to trust what you said. And that's what I can give you praise and thanks for, that you were straight, that you were right, that you were trustworthy. And that I can choose to align with that. And I say that because I remember having a conversation with a couple friends many years ago, and this one lady said, God's kind of a dirty rat. He just won't do what he says he'll do. That's what we find as you live life. He says he'll heal you, yeah, but he doesn't. He says he'll provide, yeah, but he doesn't. He says he'll cover you and protect you, lest you dash your foot against a stone, yeah, but he doesn't. And it's like, is that true? If you believe that he's not going to protect you, remember what the Israelites said, you just brought us out here to kill us in the desert because there wasn't enough graves in Egypt. Okay, you keep saying that, and that's what you're going to get. Is that why he brought them out into the wilderness? You can invent who he is and what he does, why he does, and that'll become your reality. Or you can look at your circumstances and say, this feels like he doesn't care. He doesn't love me. He doesn't look. He doesn't see me. It looks like I'm nothing to him. It looks like he doesn't keep his words. That's what it looks like. But, I'm going to choose to believe otherwise. And I'm going to choose to align with the fanciful portrait that these words tell me, where I can thank him and give him praise for being straight from the deep heart, teaching me exactly that my victory, my deliverance is according to his mishpat. And so all these circumstances of blind, ignorant, stupid foolishness on my part is just the opportunity, like you said in the beginning, to become the RESH. That's the goal of all those who step foot on this planet, Earth. You want to become RESH Man? Verse 8. Et hokika. ALEF-TAV, you commanded me to imitate your engraving. Ashamar, I will guard. Aleph Lamed hyphened with Tav Ayin Zayin Bet Nun Yod. So you pronounce it as Et Chokika Ashamara El Tozabeni Od Mad. Until madly? See, if Ayin Dalet means the word until madly, until madness, or it's the witness and the testimony of madness, or it's bejeweled with madness. It looks like it's craziness, But see, here's the trick on this one. I imitate your law, your engraving. I will guard, keep watch. El Toz Beni. Tav, Ayin Zayin Bet. Ayin Zayin Bet, you look at the translation, it says forsake, but that means Aleph Lamed means do not. So Al-Tira could be read as do not fear. Aleph Lamed hyphened means do not, but Aleph Lamed hyphened also means motion toward. So Al-Tira can mean do not fear, but it can mean also do fear. Well, which is it? Is it fear or not fear? Well, Tira, the word translated fear, Tav, Yod, Resh, Aleph. But I could say, well, wait a minute. Resh Aleph has to do with, Resh Aleph Hey is what you see, behold, put on exhibition. And the word fear has to do with give honor. So Aleph Lamed can be both do something, motion toward, and don't do something. Aleph Lamed in that case is exactly the same as Lamed Aleph. Lo and Al are synonyms of the negatory, don't do it. But see, here's the trick. Ayin, Zayin, Bet, you look up in the dictionary, it means forsake. So I can read this as do not forsake, and then the nun yod suffix is imparted to me, or don't forsake me until madness or testimony very much. But Ayin, Zayin, Bet also means help, assist, and fortify. So there I could read it as Aleph Lamed means yes, and toward that direction. So I could read this both ways. Your law, I imitate your engraving. I will guard, keep watch. Toward help. Do not forsake me. Do not abandon me. Help, assist, and fortify very madly, very much. Ornament voraciously. I really mean it. Ayin Dalet, Mem Aleph Dalet. If there was one cry is with both hands, don't forsake me, please help. That's verse 8. So that's the end of the first Aleph section here. Now, again, if I went through all of Psalms 119 like this, 8 verses per week, I'll do that if you want. That may seem too belabored, but I'll do it if you want. Back in 2011, what's that, 14 years ago, when I was doing the ALEF-BEIT class of eriktology, I mentioned Psalm 119. And I read just the meanings of the first letters, first words of each section. I didn't ever get into looking at the entire psalm. We could do that now. Here it is all these years later. At that time, people were telling me, just keep telling us about the same thing. What's the Mishkan pattern? How does it relate to Yeshua? And I said, look, I know there's other stuff in this language. I want to see where this goes. And nobody that I knew wanted to hear it. They just keep telling us the same stuff over and over again. Well, here it is all these years later, and I'm back at 119, and as I read last week, it looks like what David is saying is it's in learning how to read your language. There's something about learning how to read your language where the mysteries, the secret of the kingdom is held. And I believe that in that secret mystery is the proof that Yahusha is the Mashiach. The word Shin Yod Chet is used in some other verses, but it means communication. The Messiah is the one who is the conversation, touchable, tangible, Mem Shin. What conversation? The 22 letters. So to be able to see Yahusha in the story of the 22 letters, I believe is integral, is critical consideration. And I know a number of people who have decided they don't want to listen to me anymore. They don't want to study this paleo anymore. If I think that that man that lived 2,000 years ago, that YHUH, has anything to do with this stuff. Well, I believe he does. I believe it's when it says ayin dalet hyphen to ayin tav in Daniel 12, verse 4, where the Archangel Gabriel is saying to Daniel, hide the words and seal the book, ayin dalet ayin tav, until the time is the way it's translated, of the end, QOOF-YOD-TET, but what does that mean? Until the time of the end. Ayin dalet ayin tav QOOF-YOD-TET. Well, Yod QOOF-YOD-TET means wake up, so it doesn't necessarily mean end. It could mean end of the slumber, of the sleep, of the comatose, where Israel wakes up. It's like, well, people are saying these days that we're at the threshold of some transition, whether it's world economics, whether it's world government, whether it's dawning of the age of Aquarius, the water pourer, and whether he's going to pour out violence or pour out blessing. Maybe there's the option of both. There's other people saying there's a shift of energy, a blah, blah. There's all kinds of stuff where people are saying, we're right at the edge and there was a blood red moon a couple days ago and this is right at the time of, it's like, well, are we? Are we at the edge of a doorway? Got your option. You go this way, that way, blessing, cursing. Ayin dalet, ayin tav. Ayin tav is translated time. Ayin dalet is translated as until. Here, it's not just until, it's a witness, it's a testimony, a testification. Something is declaring. Ayin tav is translated time, but it's to understand ayin tav, the signs, the symbols, the marks, the orthography. Can you comprehend the orthography of the letters of the alphabet? And they're hyphened to ayin dalet, and Yeshua claimed to be the door of his Father's house. The word house is not just that abode in the heavens, up where he lives, but the word house is the word bet, which is also the letter bet, which means in, on, with, among, through, or possibly against, in the condition of, means all those things. But it is also to be taught, trained, and domesticated. I'm the door to my Father's taught, trained, and domesticated. For Yeshua to be the door to comprehending the ayin tav means that somehow when he came and he walked out, as I call it, the gospel narrative, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, as he walked out that chronological series of events, it correlates, it corresponds to the stepping stone path of these 22 alphabet letters. From him coming from heaven to earth, Aleph, betting, Gimel, Dalet, hey, here, the man, the Vav, who would be put to the weapon, Zion, resurrecting, Hey, Zadi, Kuf, ascending, coming up, and also coming back, Kuf after this, coming back as the RESH Man, Sheen, fiery, El Shaddai, the Almighty, Tav. There's the accomplishment of the Aleph projected reason for coming. To see Yeshua, that gospel narrative story is huge, is Rosh, is fundamental, is maximal, the pinnacle. Is that it's everything, it's right there in Bereshit, Bet Resh, pure clean, Bet Resh, Aleph Sheen. To see that with Yahusha is something to see. If you don't want to see Yeshua, if you can't, or ask him for eyes to see. I'm just describing what I see. So anyway, I'm going to end this here, but before we quit, is there anybody that wants to ask or say or make any comment about this while we're being recorded concerning this study about, is this too much meticulous detail of what these words mean? Again, these are up the cam scanner, the photograph of these pages is on the chat. It's there for a month. You can download it. But I would suggest you write your own, because there's something about doing it in your hand. And I could turn this into a little book, but then it's going to be trying to get it printed, and that whole thing is quite some expensive time and cost. You might want to take a look at it and see if it's helpful enough, or is it perhaps some other format would be more helpful. For example, back when I did that one video titled, "So Easy a Child Can Understand It," and I was mentioning that to put your hand to writing these words 100 times if you need to, that's the task of a child learning how to become literate, reading and writing in first grade or kindergarten. Speak the words phonetically, write the letter by letter. Paleo, modern, English, modern cursive, add that. That's not added here. I'll do that for the following ones. I'll add the modern cursive. Is there something more I could possibly do to make this easier? Does anybody have anything they want to say? Anybody? You're on, the camera's still rolling. You're welcome to say whatever you want to say.
Hey, Eric, this is Diana.
Yeah, hi.
So I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your perspective. Sometimes when I'm sitting and I'm just pondering the letters and pondering words, it can become overwhelming. So to know that it's not wrong to look at a word from 7 different perspectives, if you will, it's okay. It's permissible. It's not condemning. It's not, it's not, no, that's not right. No, it's a stream of consciousness. It's the ruach moving in and around as I'm pondering. It's a beautiful thing. And to hear your perspective, I'm thinking, sometimes I see it the same way you do. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I see it in a different way. Like when I was looking at the word fast for fasting, there was Zadi Mem. And I was like, why is fasting or a fast Zadi Mem? And I thought, And so, it took me a long while to realize that, without the Mishkan pattern, I would not have put together that the covenant, the sprouting of his commandments, his ordinances, his statutes, all of those in the Ark of the Covenant is something that once it's meditated upon, it sprouts new life. And without the Mishkan pattern, it would never have clicked. I would still be sitting there going, now, why is that fasting? There are these things that you've shed light on, that he's giving you the tools in your tool belt to give us the same kind of tools, but then your flavor is a little different than our flavor. And it's not wrong. And it's so beautiful to know that he's moving and he's gathering, and it's beautiful to sit and ponder his language. So thank you. I say this again and again. I say thank you. Thank you for showing up every week. Thank you. No matter how hard and difficult your week has been, that you invest yourself and your time to teach us, and so that we can teach others. And when the time comes, it too will sprout new life. So I just thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Well, does anybody else want to say anything, or should we go ahead and close this day down for this study?
Shalom, this is Sally. I just wanted to make a mention before the video's over that I've been studying the eriktology and the Torah, the Paleo letters since 2017. And I agree with Eric 100% that you know, learning the letters and is absolutely it's foundational. Whether you learn them in modern Hebrew shapes first or whenever, it's like just knowing the sequence of letters, learning that there's songs to learn them and getting that really down so that if someone mentions a letter, you can, you know, quickly assess where that is located in the sequence of letters in your own knowing. And then seeing YHUH in the sequence of letters is absolutely, you know, exceptionally foundational and really crucial. It's so important. So I just wanted to say thank you, Eric, because I can see what you're saying, and I'm so thankful that you're bringing this up because, you know, we get far along in our studying, and we have, you know, still some that are in a state of learning where they still need to learn the letters. So it's like my encouragement with the hug is for everybody to make sure that we have the foundation of the letter sequence in, and then really see YHUH in there, and that can be like a checkpoint. Do you see YHUH in the letters? Can you see them? Can you see what I see? Hallelujah. Amen.
Thank you, Sally. Let me just do a quick thing here. Verse 8, just the last one here. If I was going to see Yeshua in the letters, just to show you what I think that looks like. You have it starts with ALEF-TAV Chokika, et Chokika. Well, what's ALEF-TAV, right? Well, you know, Yahuwah Zavot claims to be the first and the last, Aleph and Tav. Yeshua reiterates that in the book of Revelation, claiming to be the first and the last, the beginning, the end, the Aleph and the Tav, what's called Alpha and Omega. But the point is, if you say, well, what is that? That's the one word never translated, but it's used as the grammatical device that points to the noun on which the verb action is. Yeah, but here when it starts off the sentence, there's no verb action. It just says your law, ALEF-TAV, pointing at. You could say, well, it's just pointing, but you could say, okay, I'm gonna then choose to say this is the first and the last, your law, your. See, the word zadivav is command. Chok could also be command, but they change the word and say, well, it's more like precept, ordinance, statute. You know, the thing you told us to do. Well, that's a command. So again, these words, I gave you a list of half a dozen or so. That chok, Torah, erot, mishvat, mitzvot. Those are all translated either statute, ordinance, command, law, testimony, precept. Things kind of float around. That word fakad was translated precept. You told us to do something. That's the precept, and you're going to be held responsible. What you're being held responsible for is what did you do with what I told you to do something with? I told you to watch, keep guard. That's shomer. Okay, so the idea is the next word, ashomer. I will do exactly with what you said to do. But how is that Yeshua? If I say the ALEF-TAV is really that word that he invented, which is composed of this whole alphabet, that this is who he is and what he's going to do, how we can recognize him. This is his DNA, as it were. So then when you go back to John 1:1, in the beginning was the word was with Elohim, the word is Elohim, was Elohim. But then you look at it in Greek and it's not the same as English. So if you look at that in Hebrew, there's something different about that phrasing, was and is. But if we could say, listen, he made this word there, that's his place, that's his stuff, the one word never translated, the one that every verb action is referencing what noun, there's something about his being that's in that ALEF-TAV. So if that's the ALEF-TAVness, what's het kuf? Well, I could say, if the letter het is the tomb or the kingdom or the compound, the treasury, kuf is Rising up, it means after this. It's the resurrection. It's the resurrected one. It's the harvesting sickle. It's that which arises and floats up into the air and is coming back. It's like this whole, the kingdom come. I could read as het kuf then. Yod is this powerful hand, but it's also my, and then the kaf yours. But then if Yod is the Yod Kaf, remember Yod Kaf Lamed, Hayakah, hey, Yod Kaf Lamed is translated the palace or the temple, or Yod Kaf Lamed means translated as a word, he will have power and capacity to prevail and contain it all. But it's inside the het. So I picture that as being Yeshua, once he was put into the tomb, Kaf Lamed Mem, put to shame, calamity, as it were, humiliated, but he will have the power and capacity to prevail. So I could say, well, then this means that arising up from the tomb, he will have the power and capacity. But that's a picture, a metaphorical picture of the story of what's in the ALEF-TAV. So the ALEF-TAV is to say all capacity to prevail no matter what the dire event. That's what's in ALEF-TAV. That's who he is, the one who prevails, because his reality is outside of time and space. It circumvents any matter on the face of the earth. His reality is beyond the scope of what can be described. His Alephness super transcends the betness. Aleph Shin Mem Resh. I, first person, I will. Shin, that's the monogram of El Shaddai. Mem, the place of liquefaction, like the caterpillar going into a chrysalis and decomposing. Resh, the resurrected one, you could say, I will override, I will provide, I will, because Shin El Shaddai is not only the destroyer of all opposition, but the provider of all benefits. I will, see, out of the mem comes the noon. And so another way to read this, the translation mechanism, is that because noon follows mem in the natural organic sequence of the letters, mem is a place and noon is what emerges from. So knowing that, when I see mem resh, I can say, well, resh is in the noon position of emerging from the mem. And if resh is the exalted man, the successful man emerging from chaotic liquefaction, which is at the low point of going into the tomb, dying, decomposing, but then coming back out as this stature of reshness, then that's what I will provide for El Shaddai to be saying, I will see to it that from the womb of death, I will provide the resh status. And so whatever that demise is, again, that's a reiteration of chokika. Aleph Lamed, I will then Lamed again, the teaching, the authority of the Torah. I who am that authority. I am the teacher. That's Yeshua came as the Nicodemus. Nicodemus was known as the great teacher, but YHUH himself is the great teacher, leading as he saw his father doing. Tav Ayin Zayin Bet. The accomplishment of understanding the Zayin Bet is the word for flow, or that which has a flux. Zayin Bet Nun, that which flows. But Ayin is understanding, weighing, measuring. Zayin is the vow. Bet Nun Yod is my son. Beni, or Bet is with. Nun life action. again, Nun emerging out of Mem. So I could say it kind of goes back to this watery concept. Anything that flows, Zayin Bet Zavav, is that which has a flux. But you could say that from the vow, my son's vow is to provide the understanding emerging from the being put to the weapon. So for the fact that Yeshua was crucified because the Zion is being put to the weapon and then being put into the tomb Chet, or it's the moat around the kingdom, if Chet's the castle. And so the Vav is the bridge, that which connects over Zion, that which disconnects, that which cuts off. So I can say that he came down here in order to provide a reconnection to whatever it was that Adam had disconnected us from. And yeah, this was written before Adam and Hua ever ate of the forbidden fruit, so it was all part of the plan. But nevertheless, there's something in Yeshua's being the one who laid down his life over the Zion as the one who would be cut off, as the drawbridge over the moat full of sharks and crocodiles, you could say, to provide my son, to provide that way of back to the terms of the covenant. Ayin Zion as a word is Oz, which is splendor and majesty and dynamic. It's like, wow, he came down here and went through death to resurrect, so that by becoming the resurrection, just like Adam became a dead one, the last Adam, the Tav Adam, became the living one to pull all of us into that life. That can be seen in this word. To materialize, to bet nooning, Ayin Dalet, to understand the door, Mem, that again, that place of the womb, Aleph, I will, Dalet, be the door. To understand the door is to understand it from the death. If I looked at Mem, is the depth of death. Aleph, I will, Dalet, door, I will, even through death. I will be the door, I will provide the door, I will open the way. But see, I have to know the story in order to see that in there. But what I'm saying is that to plug in the mechanism of identifying Yahusha as these letters, you might say breaking the code, interpreting the cipher. It's just another reinforcement of giving him acknowledgement, of giving him that prestige, that glory, that majesty, and thanks for doing that. But it also, it works. And then I can have the confident reality that because he rose from the dead and he led the path of, okay, we get to rise from the dead too. And that, holding to that, is, you might say, a fundamental mechanism of being able to understand what these letters, these words are saying. Help, forsake me not, until madly ornament voraciously. It's the insane beauty of from death comes life. Another way of saying the same thing. It's the kingdom come. Your kingdom come. Et chokika. But see, how would anybody say, ALEF-TAV, you commanded me to imitate your law. equates to your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. But I can make that association. Et chokika. Anyway, does anybody else want to say anything, or should we go ahead and close this off for today? Okay, well, we should go ahead and shut down for the interest of time. So, thank you.